Welcome to Veil of Shadows. Book 1, The Amulet of Shadows, by Marie Mayer. Chapter 3, The Spell Shop. Elara did not tell anyone about the hearth. She left the study only after the tremor beneath the stone faded back into stillness, after she had closed the hidden compartment and returned the bookcase to its former shape, though not the grimoire, that she carried with her. By the time she stepped into the village square, the blight had reached the outer hedges along the western road. People were beginning to notice. The square, in early afternoon, was usually mild with conversation. The baker's boy hauling flour sacks, children chasing one another between the well and the fountain, the soft hum of barter and gossip rising from open shop doors. Today the hum carried a sharper edge. A cluster of villagers stood near the old oak at the center of the square, speaking in low, urgent tones. One of the oak's lower branches drooped unnaturally, its leaves curled in on themselves, as though ashamed of their own color. Elara slowed. "Saw it myself," someone was saying. "Grass went gray in an hour." "It's just late frost," another insisted too quickly. "Frost doesn't carve symbols." Her spine tightened. She adjusted the book beneath her arm, keeping its spine turned inward, and moved past them without pausing. If she stopped, they would ask questions, and she did not yet have answers she was willing to give. The spell shop stood at the far edge of the square, its sign swinging gently in a breeze that felt cooler than it should have been. The wooden placard bore a simple painted crescent and the name Rowan and Son in careful gold lettering. Elara hesitated at the threshold only a moment before pushing the door open. A bell chimed overhead. Warmth and the layered scent of dried herbs, beeswax, and old parchment wrapped around her. The interior was dimmer than the street outside, lit by high windows and a scatter of candles set safely in glass jars. Shelves lined every wall, cluttered with jars of powdered roots, bundles of lavender and sage, coiled twine, polished stones, stoppered vials of oils that caught the light in amber glints. Behind the long counter, bent over a ledger, stood Reese. He looked up at the sound of the bell. For a heartbeat, surprise crossed his face. Then something else, sharper. "You saw it," he said without preamble. Elara exhaled slowly. "So, it's not just my imagination." Reese set the ledger aside and came around the counter. He was taller than most in the village, his dark hair perpetually refusing to lie flat no matter how carefully he tried to tame it. There was ink smudged faintly along the side of his hand, and a crease between his brows that hadn't been there last winter. "It's spreading from the tree line," he said. "Mrs. Halloway's herb beds are half gone. The river reeds look wrong." Elara's pulse ticked up at that. "The river too?" He nodded. "I went down this morning to gather mint. The water's colder than it should be. Not frozen. Just..." He searched for the word. "Withdrawn." Withdrawn. The same sensation she had felt in the clearing, life pulling inward from the edge of something unseen. Reese studied her face more closely. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't," she said. Then, after a beat, "Not properly." His gaze dropped to the book tucked under her arm. "That looks like it belongs in your mother's study." "It does." His eyebrows lifted slightly. He knew what that meant. Everyone in the village knew the study had been closed since her mother vanished. They also knew better than to ask about it directly. "You think it's connected?" he asked. "Yes." She did not soften the word. He did not flinch. Reese had grown up among jars of powdered mandrake and chalk-drawn sigils on the shop's backroom floor. His father had taught him the practical side of magic: measurements, proportions, the steady discipline of knowing how much was too much. He believed in balance, the way other people believed in gravity. If she told him the earth was pulsing, he would not laugh. "Show me," he said. Elara set the grimoire carefully on the counter and opened it to the page bearing the crown-shaped symbol. The ink did not bloom this time. It lay quiet and dark, as if aware it had already said enough. Rhys leaned in, bracing one hand on the counter. His expression shifted from curiosity to something colder. "I've seen this before," he said softly. Elara's head snapped up. "Where?" He gestured vaguely toward the back room. "In one of the older texts. A fragment mostly. I didn't pay it much mind. Thought it was symbolic." "Symbolic of what?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he traced the air just above the page, not touching the ink. "Of centralization," he said finally. "Of drawing lines inward." Her stomach tightened. Drawing what inward? Magic, influence, authority. His jaw worked slightly. "Depends on who you ask." She thought of the stump, of the pressed mark in the mud. "Someone carved it into a tree at the edge of my land," she said. Rhys's gaze flicked back to her. "Carved?" "Burned, without flame." He straightened slowly. "That's not frost," he murmured. "No." The shop's bell chimed again as someone entered. Both of them glanced toward the door instinctively. Old Mr. Larkin shuffled inside, hat clutched in his hands. He looked pale. "Rhys," he began, voice strained. "The field's near the West Road." "We know," Rhys said gently. "We're looking into it." Mr. Larkin's eyes slid to Elara, and something like relief flickered there. "You'll fix it, won't you?" he asked her. The question was simple, childlike. She felt the weight of it settle onto her shoulders. "I'll try," she said. It was the only honest answer she had. He nodded, as if that were enough, and moved deeper into the shop to purchase a bundle of warding herbs. Elara waited until he was out of earshot before speaking again. "There's something under the manor," she said quietly. Rhys's eyes sharpened. "Under?" "The foundation, beneath the hearth. It answered when I touched it." He went very still. "Answered how?" "Like a pulse, the same as in the clearing." He considered that, his gaze distant. "The manor was built on old stone," he said slowly. "Everyone knows that, but not many remember what was there before." She felt a flicker of irritation. "If you know, now would be a good time." A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth despite the tension. "I don't know for certain, just stories, that the first structure here wasn't a manor. It was smaller, older, and it burned." "Yes," she said, "I've heard that." "What burned isn't always gone," he replied quietly. A chill crept up her spine. He glanced toward the back room. "Come," he said. "There's something you should see." He led her through the narrow doorway behind the counter into the shop's storage room. It was less orderly than the front. Crates stacked against the walls, coils of rope, bundles of drying roots hanging from hooks in the ceiling beams. At the far end stood a tall cabinet with glass-paned doors. Rhys unlocked it and withdrew a thick, dust-coated volume. "I found this when I was reorganizing last winter," he said, carrying it to the small work table. "It's older than most of what we sell." He set it down and opened it carefully. The pages were brittle, the ink faded to brown. He flipped slowly until he found what he was looking for. There, sketched in rough lines, was the same broken circle and crown-like shape. Beneath it, a note in cramped script, "Mark of the Fractured Throne." Elara's throat tightened. "The Fractured Throne?" she repeated. "That's what it was called in the text," Rhys said. "Mostly dismissed as allegory, a warning about concentrating power." The writer seemed to think it was less metaphorical than others did. She leaned closer. Another line followed beneath the first. When the throne gathers, the roots wither. Her breath caught. The roots, she whispered. The grove, Rhys said. Silence stretched between them. Elara pressed her fingertips against the edge of the table to steady herself. If this is about centralizing magic, she said slowly, then something is drawing from the edges inward, from the woods, from the river. And toward a center, Rhys finished. She thought of the hearth, of the tremor beneath the stone. No, she said, shaking her head slightly. Not the manor. It felt older than that, deeper. Rhys studied her for a long moment. Did your mother ever mention an amulet? He asked quietly. The word struck like a stone dropped into still water. Yes. He inhaled slowly. My father once told me, he said, voice low, that there were artifacts forged in pairs, not common tools, not charms sold in shops, counterweights, one to gather, one to release. Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. She wrote that, Elara said, in the grimoire, that the amulet was made to counter. Rhys's gaze flicked toward the book she had brought. And where is it? She swallowed. Beneath the threshold, she said, where shadow rests longest. He let out a slow breath. That sounds like your hearth. Yes. And you haven't gone digging yet. It wasn't a question. No, she admitted. I wanted to know what I was digging for first. A flicker of approval crossed his features. That's wise. She looked down at the old text again. When the throne gathers, the roots wither, she murmured. The shop bell chimed once more in the front room. Rhys closed the cabinet gently. Whatever this is, he said, voice steady now, it's not random. Symbols don't carve themselves. Magic doesn't centralize without intent. Elara nodded. Intent. Someone had stood at the edge of her woods and burned that mark into a stump. Someone had pressed the same symbol into damp soil. She felt it then. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. This wasn't wild magic gone wrong. It was deliberate. I need to go back, she said. To the manor? Yes. Rhys studied her for a heartbeat longer. I'm coming with you. She opened her mouth to protest out of reflex, then closed it again. The pulse beneath the hearth had not felt hostile, but the sprites had, and the symbol had. Fine, she said at last. But if the floor collapses, I'm blaming you. A faint grin touched his mouth. Fair. They moved back into the front of the shop together. Mr. Larkin was gone. The square outside looked more crowded now, villagers gathering in uneasy clusters. A faint gray line crept along the cobblestones near the western edge. Elara paused at the doorway, looking out. The oak at the center of the square shuddered. One of its leaves, still green a moment before, curled in on itself and turned the color of ash. A murmur rippled through the gathered crowd. Elara's jaw tightened. Whatever it is, Rhys said quietly beside her, it's accelerating. She nodded once. Then we'd better stop it before it decides where the true center is. Together, they stepped out into the square, the bell chiming softly behind them as the door swung closed. Above, unnoticed by those below, a thin shadow passed briefly over the shop's upper window, too narrow for a cloud, too deliberate for chance. And then it was gone. Thank you for listening to Veil of Shadows. The story continues in the next chapter. Until then, may the balance hold.